Imagine this. You're a single dad, juggling work, parenting, and the chaos of everyday life. Your mornings are a blur of cereal spills, lost shoes, and the constant race against the clock. But today, something feels off. You drop your daughter off at preschool, give her a quick kiss on the forehead, and head to work, only to realize hours later that you made a mistake that will unravel a story so unexpected, so heartwarming, and so full of twists, you won't believe it's real. What if I told you that this simple mix-up would lead you to meet someone who could change your life forever? Someone who would make you question everything you thought you knew about love, family, and second chances? Welcome to the story of a single dad mistakenly enrolls his daughter in the wrong preschool, only to meet the woman who... Now, before we dive in, let me ask you this. Have you ever made a mistake that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to you? Maybe it was a wrong turn that led you to a breathtaking view, or a missed flight that introduced you to your best friend. Life has a funny way of turning our blunders into blessings, and that's exactly what happens in this story. But here's the catch, this isn't just any story. This is a tale of fate, of unexpected connections, and of a single dad who stumbled into a world he never saw coming. Let's set the scene. Meet Jack, a devoted father in his early 30s, doing his best to raise his 4-year-old daughter, Emily, after the sudden loss of his wife 2 years ago. Jack's life revolves around his little girl. Her laughter is his sunshine, her tears his rain. But as any single parent knows, the weight of raising a child alone can feel overwhelming. Between work deadlines and bedtime stories, Jack is just trying to keep his head above water. One hectic morning, in the chaos of spilled orange juice and a missing backpack, Jack makes a mistake. He accidentally enrolls Emily in the wrong preschool. It's not until he's halfway through his workday that he realizes his error. Panic sets in. He rushes back to the school, only to find Emily happily playing with new friends, completely unaware of her dad's mix-up. But here's where things get interesting. As Jack apologizes to the teacher, he locks eyes with Sarah, the school's director. There's something about her, a warmth, a kindness, a spark that he hasn't felt in years. But this isn't just a love story. It's a mystery. Because as Jack gets to know Sarah, he starts to notice little things that don't add up. Why does Emily seem so attached to her new teacher? Why does Sarah know so much about Jack's past? And why does it feel like this mistake was meant to happen? Here's the thing, life doesn't always give us the answers we're looking for. Sometimes, it throws us into situations that force us to ask the right questions. And that's exactly what happens to Jack. As he digs deeper, he uncovers secrets that will challenge everything he thought he knew about love, loss, and the power of second chances. But I'm not going to give it all away just yet. Because this story isn't just about Jack, or Sarah, or even Emily. It's about you. It's about the moments in life that make us stop and wonder, what if? What if that one mistake was actually a turning point? What if the person you're meant to meet is just one wrong turn away? So here's my promise to you, by the end of this video, you'll have the answers you're looking for. You'll understand why Jack's mistake was the best thing that ever happened to him. And who knows? You might even see a little bit of yourself in this story. But before we get to the heart of it, let me ask you one more question. What would you do if you found out that your biggest mistake was actually your greatest opportunity? Stick around because this is one story you won't want to miss. And just when you think you've figured it all out, well, let's just say the ending will leave you speechless. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into the story of a single dad mistakenly enrolls his daughter in the wrong preschool, only to meet the woman who... But remember, this isn't just Jack's story. It's yours too. Because life is full of surprises, and sometimes the best stories begin with a simple mistake. What happens next? Well, you'll just have to keep watching to find out as Jack stood in the preschool hallway, his heart racing from the realization of his mistake. He couldn't help but notice how at ease Emily seemed. She was giggling with a group of kids, her tiny hands clutching a crayon as she scribbled on a piece of paper. For a moment, Jack forgot about the mix-up. He forgot about the stress of work, the bills piling up at home, and the loneliness that had become his constant companion. All he saw was his daughter, happy and carefree, and for that. But then his eyes met Sarah's, and something shifted. There was a flicker of recognition in her gaze, as if she knew him, or at least knew something about him. It was subtle, but it was enough to make Jack's stomach twist in a way he hadn't felt in years. Sarah was unlike anyone Jack had met before. She had a calm presence, the kind that made you feel like everything was going to be okay, even when it wasn't. Her smile was warm, but there was a sadness behind it. A story she wasn't ready to tell. As she led Jack to her office to sort out the enrollment mix-up, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about Emily being in the wrong school. There was something more, something deeper, and it was pulling him in like a magnet. Over the next few days, Jack found himself making excuses to visit the preschool. He'd show up early to pick up Emily just to catch a glimpse of Sarah. He'd linger in the hallway, pretending to read the bulletin board, while secretly hoping she'd walk by. And then, one afternoon, she did. She stopped to chat, asking how Emily was adjusting, and before Jack knew it, they were talking about everything parenthood, loss, and the little moments that make life worth living. It was the first real conversation Jack had had in years, and it left him feeling both exhilarated and unnerved. But as Jack and Sarah grew closer, strange things began to happen. Emily started coming home with drawings that didn't look like her usual scribbles. They were detailed, almost too detailed for a 4-year-old, and they always seemed to feature the same woman, a woman with long, flowing hair and a kind smile. When Jack asked Emily about it, she simply said, "That's Miss Sarah." But there was something in her tone, something that made Jack's skin crawl. Then there were the phone calls. Late at night, Jack's phone would ring, but when he answered, there was only silence on the other end. At first, he brushed it off as a wrong number, but when it kept happening, he started to wonder. Was someone watching him? Was it connected to Sarah? He didn't know, but the thought kept him up at night, his mind racing with possibilities. Meanwhile, Sarah had her own secrets. She had moved to town a year ago, leaving behind a life she rarely spoke about. The other teachers at the preschool knew better than to ask too many questions, but they couldn't help but notice how protective she was of Emily. It was as if she saw something in the little girl, something familiar, something precious. And then there was the photo she kept hidden in her desk drawer. It was old and faded, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The woman in the photo looked just like Emily. As the days turned into weeks, Jack and Sarah found themselves drawn deeper into each other's lives. They started spending more time together, sharing meals and stories, and slowly, Jack began to let his guard down. But just as he started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could find happiness again, the past came knocking. One evening, as Jack was tucking Emily into bed, she looked up at him with her big, innocent eyes and said, "Daddy, do you think Mommy would like Miss Sarah?" The question hit Jack like a punch to the gut. He didn't know how to answer, but it wasn't just the mention of his late wife that shook him. It was the way Emily said it, as if she knew something he didn't. And then, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Jack was cleaning out his closet one weekend when he found an old box of his wife's things. Inside was a letter, addressed to him, but it had never been opened. His hands trembled as he unfolded the paper, and as he read the words, his world tilted on its axis. The letter revealed a secret his wife had kept from him, a secret that changed everything. But before Jack could process what he'd just learned, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "We need to talk." The timing couldn't have been worse or better. Jack didn't know what to do. Should he confront her? Should he keep quiet and see where this was going? All he knew was that the answers he'd been searching for were closer than ever, but they came with a price. As the tension mounted, Jack found himself at a crossroads. He could walk away, protect his heart, and keep his life simple. Or he could take a leap of faith, follow the mystery to its end, and risk everything for a chance at something real. But one thing was certain, the story was far from over, and the next chapter would change everything. So, what happens next? What secrets are hiding in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? And how far is Jack willing to go to find the truth? Stick around because this is just the beginning. The twists, the turns, the heart-stopping moments, they're all coming, and you won't want to miss a single second. But remember, this isn't just Jack's story. It's yours too. Because life is full of surprises, and sometimes the most unexpected moments lead to the greatest discoveries. So keep watching because the best is yet to come. Jack's hands were still trembling as he stared at Sarah's text. "We need to talk." The words felt heavy, loaded with meaning he couldn't quite grasp. His mind raced back to the letter he'd just found, the one from his late wife that had turned his world upside down. The secret it revealed was too big, too painful to process all at once, and now Sarah wanted to talk. Was it a coincidence? Or was she somehow connected to the truth he'd just uncovered? Jack didn't know, but he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't even imagine. When Jack arrived at the preschool the next day, Sarah was waiting for him in her office. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a nervous energy that made Jack's stomach churn. She motioned for him to sit, but he remained standing, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "What's going on, Sarah?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. She hesitated, her eyes darting to the door as if she was afraid someone might overhear. Then she took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "Jack, there's something you need to know about Emily." The room seemed to spin as Sarah began to explain. She told him about the photo in her desk drawer, the one of the woman who looked just like Emily. She told him about the strange connection she felt to his daughter, a connection she couldn't explain but couldn't ignore. And then she dropped the bombshell. "Emily isn't just your daughter, Jack. She's mine too." For a moment, Jack couldn't breathe. His mind flashed back to the letter, to the secret his wife had kept from him. Suddenly, it all made sense, the resemblance, the drawings, the way Sarah seemed to know so much about his past. But before Jack could respond, Sarah continued. "I didn't know she was yours," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't even know she existed until I moved here and saw her at the preschool. But when I did, I knew. I just knew." Jack felt like the ground had been ripped out from under him. He wanted to be angry, to scream at Sarah for keeping this from him. But all he could feel was a deep, aching sadness. His wife had kept this secret for years. And now, here was Sarah telling him the truth he never knew he needed to hear. But the questions kept coming. Why had his wife kept this from him? Why had Sarah waited so long to tell him? And what did this mean for Emily? As Jack struggled to process everything, a new layer of mystery emerged. Sarah revealed that she hadn't come to town by accident. She'd been searching for something or someone, and when she found Emily, she knew she couldn't leave. But there was more to her story, something she wasn't ready to share. Jack could see it in her eyes, the way she hesitated, the way she looked away when he asked too many questions. There was a shadow hanging over her, a past she was running from, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that it was about to catch up to her. Meanwhile, Emily seemed to sense that something was wrong. She started having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night crying for her daddy. When Jack asked her what was wrong, she would just shake her head and say, "I don't know." But there was a fear in her eyes, a fear that mirrored Jack's own. He couldn't help but wonder if she knew more than she was letting on, if she could feel the tension between him and Sarah. And then, the unexpected twist. One evening, as Jack was putting Emily to bed, she looked up at him with her big, innocent eyes and said, "Daddy, is Miss Sarah my mommy?" The question hit Jack like a punch to the gut. He didn't know how to answer, but before he could say anything, Emily continued. "She told me she loves me," she whispered. "And she said she's always been with me, even when I couldn't see her." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. What did Emily mean? Had Sarah been watching her all along? Was there more to her story than she was letting on? The questions swirled in his mind, but before he could make sense of them, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, just 2 words. Be careful. The stakes had never been higher. Jack was caught in a web of secrets, lies, and half-truths, and he didn't know who to trust. Sarah had answers, but she was holding back. Emily seemed to know more than she was saying, but Jack didn't want to push her. And now, there was someone else in the mix. Someone who was watching, waiting, and warning him to be careful. As the tension mounted, Jack realized he was running out of time. The past was closing in, and if he didn't act soon, it would swallow him whole. But what could he do? Confront Sarah? Dig deeper into his wife's secrets? Or wait for the next twist, the next clue that would bring him closer to the truth? One thing was certain, the story was far from over, and the next chapter would be the most explosive yet. So, what happens next? Who sent the warning? And what secrets are still hiding in the shadows? Stick around because the answers are coming, and they're going to blow your mind. But remember, this isn't just Jack's story. It's yours too. Because life is full of surprises, and sometimes the most unexpected twists lead to the greatest revelations. So keep watching because the best and the worst is yet to come. Jack's heart pounded as he stared at the cryptic message on his phone. Be careful. The words echoed in his mind, a warning that felt both urgent and ominous. He glanced at Emily, who was now fast asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling with the innocence of a child who had no idea how much her world was about to change. Jack knew he couldn't wait any longer. The secrets, the lies, the unanswered questions, they were all coming to a head, and he needed to confront Sarah before it was too late. The next morning, Jack dropped Emily off at the preschool, his nerves frayed but his resolve steady. He found Sarah in her office, her face pale and drawn, as if she hadn't slept. She looked up when he walked in, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension in the room was palpable, a silent acknowledgement that the truth could no longer be avoided. "We need to talk," Jack said, his voice low but firm. Sarah nodded, her hands trembling as she gestured for him to sit. What followed was a conversation that would change everything. Sarah began by explaining the full story, her voice shaking as she recounted the past she had tried so hard to leave behind. She told Jack about the accident that had taken her memory, about the years she spent piecing together fragments of a life she couldn't fully remember. She told him about the day she saw Emily at the preschool and felt a connection so strong it brought her to tears. "I didn't know she was your daughter," Sarah said, her eyes filled with regret. "But when I saw her, something inside me just clicked. I knew she was mine." Jack listened in stunned silence, his mind reeling as the pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. The letter from his late wife, the photo in Sarah's desk, Emily's drawings, it all made sense now. His wife had kept Sarah's existence a secret, believing it was the best way to protect everyone. But the truth had a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it was buried. As Sarah finished her story, Jack felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and something else he couldn't quite name. Warning? And what secrets are still hiding in the shadows? Stick around because the answers are coming, and they're going to blow your mind. But remember, this isn't just Jack's story. It's yours too. Because life is full of surprises, and sometimes the most unexpected twists lead to the greatest revelations. So keep watching because the best and the worst is yet to come. Jack's heart pounded as he stared at the cryptic message on his phone. Be careful. The words echoed in his mind, a warning that felt both urgent and ominous. He glanced at Emily, who was now fast asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling with the innocence of a child who had no idea how much her world was about to change. Jack knew he couldn't wait any longer. The secrets, the lies, the unanswered questions, they were all coming to a head, and he needed to confront Sarah before it was too late. The next morning, Jack dropped Emily off at the preschool, his nerves frayed but his resolve steady. He found Sarah in her office, her face pale and drawn, as if she hadn't slept. She looked up when he walked in, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension in the room was palpable, a silent acknowledgement that the truth could no longer be avoided. "We need to talk," Jack said, his voice low but firm. Sarah nodded, her hands trembling as she gestured for him to sit. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her and saw not just the woman who had turned his life upside down, but someone who had been searching for the same thing he had, a sense of belonging, a place to call home. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Sarah could answer, the door to the office burst open. A man stood in the doorway, his face twisted with anger. Jack recognized him instantly. It was Sarah's ex-husband, the man she had been running from. "You thought you could just disappear?" he snarled, his eyes blazing. "You thought you could take what's mine and get away with it?" The room erupted into chaos. Sarah tried to reason with him, but he wasn't listening. Jack stepped in, shielding Sarah and Emily, who had come running at the sound of raised voices. In that moment, something inside Jack snapped. He wasn't just a single dad trying to make it through the day. He was a protector, a fighter, someone who would do whatever it took to keep his family safe. The confrontation ended as quickly as it began, with Sarah's ex-husband storming out, vowing to return. But Jack knew this wasn't over. He turned to Sarah, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We'll figure this out," he said. Together. And they did. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Sarah worked to untangle the mess of their pasts, building a future that included not just Emily, but each other. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if they were doing the right thing. But through it all, they held on to the one thing that mattered most: love. The final twist came on a quiet evening as Jack and Sarah sat on the porch, watching Emily play in the yard. Sarah turned to Jack, her eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I'd find this," she said. "A family. A home. You." Jack reached for her hand, his heart full in a way he hadn't thought possible. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I'm glad we did." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the scene, Jack realized that sometimes the best stories begin with a mistake. A wrong turn, a missed flight, a preschool mix-up. It doesn't matter how it starts. What matters is where it leads. And for Jack, Sarah, and Emily, it led to a love that was stronger than any secret, any lie, any fear. So, what's the takeaway from this story? Life is unpredictable, messy, and full of surprises. But if you're brave enough to face the unknown, to embrace the twists and turns, you just might find something beautiful waiting on the other side. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best moments in life come from the most unexpected places. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, keep believing in the power of second chances.